is we're in 403. Yep, this is
Yeah.
episode 403. Matt
I'm just
Ray,
going through my
opening the
Dropbox
show notes for the first time. Just like always, live listeners. Hold on, let me put in. We're streaming now.
Opening the show notes and spell checking them.
Yeah.
How do you not see the underlined reds?
I see no underlined reds in episode.
Oh, really? It must be now. Like
what is wrong?
I must have like some spell check thing turned on automatically.
What? No, seriously. Like what word is misspelled right now?
I just fixed available.
Okay, what's the next one? Don't fix the next one. I want to see it.
TiVo's underlined. It might be camel cased. I don't think it's an acronym. I don't know, but
that's interesting.
YouTube TV is underlined. OTA is underlined, but that's an acronym.
Yeah, so that's interesting. That's okay.
Mersk,
I do not see. Like, I see 0 red right now in this document.
Slake, ChatGPT, VMs, Figma. These are just pasted, so they're just. It doesn't like Cotes.
Yeah, so you have like you must have like no, seriously, I want to know how you're doing this. Like, what browser?
I do too. I do too.
What browser are you in? Are you in Chrome?
I'm in Chrome.
Okay, and do you have like? Because I'm in Safari, so maybe that's what it is. Like, I don't have.
I'm using. My extensions are 1Password.
Let's spell this word.
Consentomatic.
And okay, so let's just say.
Cote needs this one. Consentomatic. Automatically clicks yes on GDPR consent forms.
Okay, so there, I intentionally spelled this word wrong.
Oh, it's got to be Grammarly.
No, I've got Grammarly. Right click. Okay, yep, and it does it right. Okay, so it does now. That's the only word that was read in here before. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's got to be Grammarly.
All right, got to be clear. All right, well, I need to look at that then.
Because then I've got like, uBlock, Privacy Badger, Ghostery.
Then I have 17 other ad blockers going.
No, but Grammarly and video download helper.
Right.
Anyway.
All right. Well, there was that was the exciting segment on spell check. There's nothing more that people want than talk of spell checking on YouTube. Okay, so let's see.
It's a visual medium.
It is a visual medium. That's right. But it's true. Like, I mean, I need more spell checkers in my life. Maybe I need to go get one. I'm just surprised that.
So I had a long discussion with my son about AI versus ML because he was writing a school paper about bioinformatics, and I had to explain to him that a fingerprint ID is not AI. It's ML. It's there's no just because you're matching some heuristics that doesn't make it AI. That's my pedantic hill to die on. I've got a lot of hills.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Is that like I guess that's an interesting question in general. Like, what is the official?
Most of what people call AI is just pattern matching.
Right. Well, I guess is machine learning not considered AI? I guess I don't know. I feel like the broad. I think if we ask like a regular person, it's a subset, right? It is one type of it. I don't know. That's what I would have said.
I mean, AI is like the big tent umbrella of what you put all these things in, but 90% of it is not what I would think of as AI.
90%.
I mean, like I'm willing to call ChatGPT AI because it's generating stuff that in a undecipherable way to humans. And that's a fuzzy line from fingerprint matching to, generating text, but you can see the gradation, right? You can see how you like slowly get there, but it's still, as long as a human can kind of wrap their minds around it, I don't want to call it AI.
Well, in some ways it's like kind of like another way to think of that though is like mathematics, right? It's like, well, all these machine learning models just become like really complicated, like vector math essentially. And so like the human brain, we're not very good at that. And so if you could though, but like you can conceptually understand it as like, oh, the math just gets really complicated, but someone can explain to you what the math is. But I don't know. It's like, I guess it's like, if it's
at some point the math is too fast for humans
but it's still easy to comprehend. Like someone can like show you on a whiteboard. Whereas like, I don't know, there's like neural net kind of stuff.
Neural nets are very explainable, but I mean, technically the whole thing's explainable, but you know,
It's
it's
you just
just
wait. You just
once I started to
use the
have to get
time.
more and more hand wavy, then I'm really willing to say like, it's past the thing. To me, the difference between AI and ML is like ML, you could take the same data set and get the same trained model both ways. And
Right.
infinite times you do it with AI, your data set may be fluctuating,
Mhm.
and which is why like ChatGPT will give you different results when you put in the same inputs. Have you ever
Yeah.
done that? It does.
Yeah. No,
And
definitely.
it's because it's like, constantly messing with its own weights and stuff. Which,
Yeah, so it's
you know,
less deterministic, right? I guess
it's
that
less
maybe that's what it
deterministic,
is, right? Mhm.
which is more like a real person.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No,
And
that makes
ML
sense.
is like it's machine learning. It's literally just brute forcing something.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess if you keep the weights and everything the same, then the results should be the same. Like, the
You
cat
know,
picture will be a cat picture unless you change the weights of the algorithm, right?
yeah, yeah, you're gonna get, that was like when we were doing like the PyTorch. I've done some demo stuff with like PyTorch and or TensorFlow, not
Right.
PyTorch, TensorFlow, and like you always wanted the same results, so you just always set the same starting data
Yeah.
set, and you always got the same output. And
Yeah,
it's
so you
like
get the same yeah, so you don't change the weights, the same data set, you always get the same results, whereas, like, yeah, I guess you're right, other versions of the models will
and as you're constantly giving them feedback, like constantly letting them explore the responses of what they show people and try to change their own weights, that yeah, sure, I'll call that, that's artificial. It's still you can still wrap your head around it, but at no point it's more like chance and randomness are emerging new behaviors, and you don't get that with ML. I
like
mean, you can get stuff that you didn't expect, but it's reproducible.
alright, that concludes this week in machine learning with Matt Ray. Tune in
All
next
right.
week where we use a Raspberry Pi to build an ML model.
Let me go
Uh,
grab some water real quick. Sorry, I
alright,
just realized I have no water.
okay. Alright, is anyone live? Are we let's see here. Mhm. Small water break. An exciting time for YouTube inputs. Water break over.
Well, yeah, that's a problem with. All right, I think I'm ready-ish.
All right, we have one thing in the one ad, so I'll we'll just have like a small pause, but otherwise,
Did
are you
we
ready?
advertise our show all the places?
I put it in the Slack, and I think it automatically goes to the Twitter, so I think we're good.
All right.
Oh, we didn't do it Mastodon. You want to put it in Mastodon?
I don't know how to do it in Mastodon.
Okay, hold on. We
Head of
should
hustle.
or hacky. It's called hack. All right, let me go there. Now I have to log out. What's up? They still haven't released the Mac client yet for
I saw no. I think you can run the like iOS version
yeah.
under the Mac OS, but
Oh,
I still don't really like that experience. And apparently, it does support multi-pane. Um, I'm just waiting for the desktop
yeah, same. All right, let me log in. Let me get the all right.
because then, I mean, the thing that I don't like about Mastodon that I use on Twitter is Mastodon. If you want to see someone's toots or whatever, or follow them, you have to like subscribe to them or follow them or whatever it's called.
Yeah, you're like a list
Um,
user, right?
yeah, yeah, and
Mhm.
and with Twitter, it's like I had I don't know 400 or 500 people I followed, and then I had lists that had another 400 or 500 people who I just paid attention to, but you know I didn't expect to hear back from like William Gibson or uh, Texas sports, that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's
People
like I
that
don't
we
need
know
to
from
follow you.
content. I never
Yeah,
used lists though. I have to be honest, never really used
well,
them.
and
So
then you do multi-columns with them, right? So then you
yeah,
have like the people I follow, then you have a news column, then you have a
yeah.
sports
I guess you're
column.
right. You kind of need to all go hand in hand, right? So
Yeah,
all right,
and because if you have one feed, it's just a mess. Yeah, and
all
I
right.
started trying. I played around with it with Mastodon a little bit, but you know, it's eh, it doesn't work well. Because I mean, what I'll probably end up doing is just follow everybody, everything I want to do, and then don't look at my main feed and make lists that do that filtering for me. If I have to follow people to get their content, so I'll end up following like 1,000 people, but I won't ever look at my main feed.
Okay, but
I'll
like
have
it has lists, right? Mastodon has
Yeah,
lists.
yeah, yeah, it has
Okay.
lists, but you
Okay.
can't to put stuff in a list, it has to be well, in
Oh,
the
you
web
have to
client at
follow them
least,
to put them in a
you have
list?
to
Is that what
follow
you're
them
saying?
to put them in a
Oh,
list, and I'm
okay.
hoping like
All right, that
Ivory
part I
will
did
let
not
me
understand.
yeah, yeah, hopefully Ivory will let me not do that.
All
Everyone's
right,
got a
cool.
lot of hopes and dreams on Ivory.
Well, the Mac client is good. I mean, sorry, not the Mac
The
client. The
iPhone,
iOS
yeah.
client is good. So, I mean, I think it's reasonable to have high expectations. Now, I don't know. There may be some limitations. The thing you just said there is like, well, that's the back end, so maybe that's true. It's not going to be able to do
Yeah,
everything.
but, if we know they're gonna have column views, and if I just don't follow my main column, that's fine.
All right, well, get it done, Ivory Mac OS people. We need it.
My
We need
money
that way
awaits you.
on
Yes.
the Mastodon.
I'm ready to give you $9.99 a year or whatever.
Yeah, me too.
I just
All
re-upped
right,
my podcast
subscriptions.
subscription. Yes,
That's right, man. Are you ready? Let's get
I'm
going.
ready. Let's do this.
Well, after a long time, Matt, I am finally officially a cable cutter, right? So after I would say it was roughly a
Whoa.
20-year relationship with DirecTV, I finally canceled it and I sent back what I would term the oldest DirecTV receiver ever still in use, I guess is the way to say that. And so, and I don't know if you've canceled anything lately, at least in case of DirecTV, like shockingly, they're like, we need you to send all of this back. Now they pay for it, so it's not like a big deal, but it's just sort of like,
Mhm.
it was more like, are you sure? Like, really, this stuff is pretty old. Are
I,
you
I
sure you want it
remember.
back?
I remember like canceling Time Warner, and they're like, you have to bring all the stuff back to, and you couldn't mail it. You had to go in person to the Time Warner office. And then when I got there were like 30 people in line for one person. I mean, like Time Warner, they had just a hatred of their customers. And then if you wanted to leave, then you were like, you were dead to them. They wanted to hate your corpse.
Well, now tell me where you're at now. What is your? I don't even know in Australia. Does Australia have cable? Or did you already cut the cable and never had cable in
I
Australia?
never had cable.
What's
Yeah,
your
I've
situation?
been streaming the whole time. Streaming with a US VPN. So like I Netflix is in this cat and mouse with the VPN. Like right now, I don't really care that I'm on Australian Netflix. Um, we're on Australian Disney Plus. I was on like the bundle with ESPN and Hulu
Mhm.
in the US, but I canceled that after a while because I wasn't really using Hulu. Um, and so now I've got like so the permanent quote unquote semi permanent subscriptions are Netflix and Disney Plus, and they're both Australian. And Disney Plus Australia carries all the Hulu content. Um, so like so shows that I was watching on Hulu, I mostly get there, except for the Wu-Tang Saga, which means like once a year I have to re-up my Hulu subscription so I can watch the Wu-Tang Saga.
Oh,
Um,
that's funny.
yeah, and then the Apple and Paramount and who else will get like a 3-month subscription,
Uh-huh.
to like, catch up on that one or two shows that you were watching on those channels. My wife got a new iPhone, so we got, the Apple
You get some
TV.
stuff for free for a few months, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you cancel them. So really it's just Netflix and Disney Plus. And then of course Amazon Prime, right?
Okay.
But there's not a
That's just sort
ton
of
of
like
content.
default, right? So, well, I
Yeah.
thought like the reason this was a good topic for us was that we should like put this through the lens of digital transformation, right? So, okay, so here we are. Like, it's like imagine we collectively all started a digital transformation project, and I'm gonna say the starting date was 25 years ago because here are the dates I looked up. So, TiVo, which I don't know for those in the uninitiated, was sort of the first DVR. Like I'm going to call that, they made it popular. Essentially, this idea that you could just
Oh yeah.
basically
I love my
put, and it
TiVos.
really was a small computer under your TV. And I know it will seem crazy to people listening now. It was earth shattering. The fact that you could just record stuff, it would show up, and it had this phenomenal. I think to this day, it still has one of the best, if you will, TV based interfaces to like, watch shows, skip commercials. I mean, I can't explain to people that maybe weren't alive or didn't watch TV at this period, like how revolutionary it was. So that came out in March 31st of 1999. So I'm calling that as like the beginning of
I'm
the
sure
process.
I probably had mine in March or April.
Right. I mean, it was the kind of
Yeah.
thing like you went to someone's house and you saw it and you were
Yep.
like, I need to go home
Sold.
immediately and get that. Right.
Yes.
Now,
And I even belong to the camp of upgrading my TiVos.
like
So I
now
was,
still, or you mean,
cloning the hard drives onto
yeah,
larger
yeah.
hard drives, hacking on them. So yes, I was all in on TiVo.
All right, so that was 99. And then Netflix was the DVD service now. That launched in 1998. But I think we can go back in history and say that Reed Hastings had the vision that like this was the precursor to streaming. So I'm going to say, that was sort of the mark of like streaming is coming. And Netflix streaming officially launched in 2007, which is actually not that long ago when you think about it. Like, I would have guessed longer when I was looking these dates up. So
I mean, 15, 16 years ago, and now they're like industry powerhouse.
Absolutely.
Whose stock dropped half last year. But yeah,
I think we should say to ourselves right now, it's like, okay, so we're 25 years in this conversion from old school cable / analog TV to what will be like somehow in the future, right? Like, that will all be, there will be no more cable TV, and
your kids
everything
will never
will be
understand
great.
channels.
That's right. And I think we should basically score it out. Like, how close are we to closing out the digital transformation of TV? So we'll do a little report card. So, and I want to get your take. So the first is, I think if we were like writing the requirements, we'd say first thing we want is almost all scripted TV and movies should be available on demand. Like in 1999, we'd be like, hey, listen, we shouldn't have to wait and do all this crazy stuff. We should just have what we want to see from a scripted point of view on demand, available anytime. I'm going to score that as an A. I think for this point, it's pretty much everything is there. There are a few limited windows where things get.
I mean, it's probably like an A minus because you still have like reality TV shows and stuff that come out weekly, and
there's a little lag. Doesn't always show up, right?
And like I'm not watching them, but I know like some of my kids' friends and stuff are like, oh, did you watch The Bachelor Australia last night?
That TV is a little. It's close, but like it's still not 100% available immediately on demand. Sometimes there's a little window where like you have to wait a week or something like that. All right, so that one I think we're doing pretty good on. Now the next one was, can we stream high quality video without having any and with sound and surround sound and not feel like this is definitely a lot worse than like a Blu-ray player or just some high fidelity. Totally. I think that's good, right? Like I think you can get 4K, you can get when I'm watching a movie, I don't really complain about like the video quality.
Artifacts and stuff. That rarely happens anymore. Yeah.
Now, before we get email from like the Blu-ray enthusiasts and everyone start to explain to us how much better
they're not Blu-ray enthusiasts anymore, right? Well, they're
isn't it still that,
isn't Blu-ray just like 1080p?
No. I believe,
I don't know.
I thought
had
Blu-ray
a DVD
was
player
like
in like 7 or 8 years.
4K, you can get it, but the uncompressed versions, like like huge, massive ones. So
I didn't know they had 4K Blu-ray.
I don't, maybe wrong, but I just want to say to all those people, it's like I understand physical media still can give us higher bandwidth, but I'm fine with what we're getting. I'm going to give that an A. Very, very happy with it. So okay, so I think we're doing well there. Like it's almost like
slow American internet speeds.
That's right. Now that's a whole nother issue. Another day we'll have a report card on internet in America, and then let me tell you, it's not going to be good.
How did this happen?
I don't know.
I
That's
mean,
just
because I moved here and I
do you
bitched
have
about Australian
2
internet
hours
for
for me to
years.
explain monopolies and the lack of competition? Anyway, let's move on. Let's keep going. Okay, now we're starting to get into like it's almost like we're with our parents, or rather our kids' teachers. Like now they're starting to get to like the more difficult subjects. It's like, can you find the stuff, new stuff to watch? Here, I'm giving it a C because it's sort of like today, stuff is still everywhere, right? You have all the apps you just mentioned. It's kind of confusing. Mostly word of mouth is still what you need to discover a new television show. And with all the talk about AI and machine learning and things like that, it's not like you can just pull up your device of choice, and just say, and it kind of knows, right? Like, oh, of course, Brandon wants
You
to
don't
see
want
X,
it to
Y,
know,
Z.
though. I mean, the recommendations are generally terrible.
Well, that's what I mean. That's why I think this whole area is awful. Like, one, they tend to
I
hide
say give
things.
up. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, like, one, I think things that they know you want to watch, they almost actively hide it because they want you to like be showing you other stuff. And then two, they're showing you stuff that in theory, like especially the Netflix recommendation is like, there's nothing more inaccurate than a Netflix recommendation where it's like 95% chance you'll like it. Is like, no way. It's like almost nothing is recommended to me. Do I like it at a high level? So at the best I can say here is that's basically a C, right? It's like you can kind of find some stuff, a couple apps trying to figure it out, but like this idea of universal search, long way to go on that one. Now the cable bundle itself, is the cable bundle actually dead? At this point, I'm going to rate that as a C because still, and we'll get into this in a minute.
I'm gonna, yeah. I mean,
live sports. Like the only way to like see live sports is still having to navigate some weird cable bundle.
But did you read the new stratechery about NBA versus Formula One?
Well, I've not read it today, but I know
that one is exactly what you're talking about. When you told me that you got rid of DirecTV, I was like, did Brandon just read that article? Because it talks about the fact that sports viewing is dropping like a rock for like the NBA. And the problem for them is they're losing people because all their content's on cable and everything's locked up there. And then like they put the finals on ABC, which not many people have land TV or terrestrial TV or whatever. And so you're like losing a whole generation of potential fans. And the only people who are like left are your super fans like you, who are like price insensitive. And then, and he talks about all the things that, Formula One's doing to overcome this. Shows like the Netflix show
Drive to Survive,
and they're making their drivers much more accessible to
100%
the media, right? And pushing they're pushing all these people and stories out there, while the NBA is just like chasing dollars from cable and losing the audience. And I feel the same thing's happening with college football.
Yeah, and so this is why I say this is why I'm giving the cable bundle only a C and not an F, because
I'm gonna give it like a D because
here's the reason.
It's failing. It's on its way to failure.
100% it's on its way to failing. And that's what we want in the digital transformation grading system. When it's gone, we'll know that we've achieved digital transformation here. Now, the reason I'm getting to see here is that like YouTube TV is what I've recently embraced, because that basically they have slimmed down the cable bundle, right? So really only has the sports, and they have freed us from the tyranny of Spectrum, DirecTV, just the archaic cable TV interfaces, right? So I like it where it's going, but like we still have a long way to go there. But YouTube TV so far, my initial about a month or so of using it has been, I'm pretty happy with it. So you can still get
do they do just like a pass through to Fox and
pretty much, yeah. They license the channels just like a cable company will.
Okay.
And you can go on YouTube TV and it has like a live tab, so you can just watch it like old school TV. And then they've got like what they show is a DVR, but it really is just like everything that you could possibly want to TiVo or record is just sitting there. Nice. So it's like, so it's good, it's solid, but like it's clearly a stopgap, right? It's like we really should just get rid of that and have like the sports channels or the subscriptions to like F1 you were referring to, but we're not there yet. So I'm gonna give that a C. Live sports we already hit on. I'm basically giving that a D. And when I do that, is like Formula One is exactly what you want. It's like you can subscribe just to Formula One. You can watch it wherever you want. For all the other sports, like especially NFL, college football, I think cricket in India is really big. The same thing. They have the same problem there around getting, that kind of, in a simple package, right? It's like we are held hostage to this point. The cable companies, I would almost say it this way, the last thing that they're preventing from us actually getting rid of them is live sports. And they've locked the rights up to most of the major sports league, including, even like Premier League and stuff like that, for probably another 10 years. Go ahead.
My son has the NBA League Pass, and it seems pretty great because it thinks, we're in Australia. It doesn't know that we're like in the US, or it thinks we're in the US, but we're in Australia. He gets blackouts for Los Angeles
for the national games, basically Wednesdays and Saturdays for us, right? So it's like, so again, like League Pass and NFL ticket, like it's close, right? And this was a big sticking point with Apple recently. It's like Apple just bought MLS rights, right? And they got everything. There are no blackouts. But with the NBA, the NFL, college football, even if you get the quote unquote digital package, like your son, right? He's gonna get blacked out on certain days, right? Or you're gonna, and to get around the blackout, you're gonna have to subscribe to like YouTube TV or ABC or something else, right? So there's still like, I mean, it's just the last gasp, right? It's like literally these sports rights are the only thing propping up, I would say, CBS, Fox, and some of these other companies, because it's just like if they gave that up, it would be perfect. So to me, this is the last moment, right? And it's like, but it's probably unfortunately going to take about 10 years for all the other sports rights to rotate through. So it's kind of depressing,
yeah.
For us.
But you're now you've abandoned the ship.
That's right. I'm trying to. Okay, so now I would say let's kind of think of it like, we're selling the business and and we're doing our digital transformation QBR, and we'd say, okay, what is the main benefit we've actually realized from this? I would say two things. One is that cable and satellite companies, for the most part, they're going away, and there is no need to, like, if you will, quote unquote, roll a truck anymore for someone to actually get access to programming. Once you have an internet connection, it's now pretty much self-service. You pick your streaming box of choice, you sign up for your services. You don't have to call anyone to come out to your house, put a hole in your, outside wall, drag a cable around the house to get it in the bedroom. So I'd say that is pretty good, right? That has actually reduced a ton of cost. And I think on the consumer side, I think we can say we've got more choices. We're free from the stupid cable boxes, and we can watch for the most part outside our houses. Whereas before, like, you only had cable at home. Now you can take your iPad or your mobile device and you can pretty much watch wherever you are. So we're kind of selling this digital transformation project 25 years in. I would say those are the benefits. What do you think, Matt? Have I missed anything, or have I oversold any of the benefits?
I mean, I think as the if I'm the NBA or NFL or whoever, I should be able to maximize my dollars, with these sorts of a la carte packages. I do think that's a little short-sighted. I think that I mean, growing up, I think we probably both subscribed to like TBS and WGN or WGH, whatever. So we get like all of the Atlanta Hawks games, or all of the Chicago Bulls games, all right? And you would like watch these basketball games, for in markets that were just, you didn't really care that much about, but it was on. And I feel like, and this goes back to what you were saying about machine learning and AI trying to make recommendations for you. I believe that like the sports are losing out on casual fans completely, because if you have to pay to watch something, you're unless it's part of a bundle that you're getting, you're less likely to just kind of casually start watching things. Which is what, like, Formula One, like, I absolutely never accidentally watched Formula One, but I could see how, like, if people got into the human interest show on Netflix, that's part of the story. There is like they're having this resurgence, at least in the US, of interest, because they're able to attract more users. And I feel like the NFL, NBA, college football are extracting maximum dollars at their long-term
at the expense
decline.
of growing the game, right? So I think that would be one downside.
But you know what? Like, when we're doing our digital, like, kickoff or whatever, like nobody wants to hear that story. They just want to hear, like, can you fix my
That's true.
problem
I think that would
today
be, we
and
put that on
solve,
the side.
the next 3/4 of problems.
I think we put it on our roadmap. We'd be like, hey, I think you're right. One, we'd have to say, we need to help sports leagues out. We need to make sure that we're giving them a way to transition over, right? So that's got to be on our roadmap. I think the other thing we could say is that if we're sitting in the room, we could say something like, hey, wasn't all this supposed to be cheaper for the end customer? And it's like, it's definitely not cheaper. By the time you like add up all the services, like it's about like neutral at best. So we didn't really get that yet, right? So we'd have to say our roadmap benefits are those. And then, and I think kind of like on the roadmap there, I also would say, to me, like one of like the unusual or surprising like things out of this is that like, I think the Apple TV, now I'm talking about the device now, not the service. I actually think the Apple TV device is like silently a huge hit. It's like, it's sort of a if you will, souped up, over provisioned cable box. That's, I think, by far and away the best streamer out there, right? Like when you're watching stuff, like everything else is so slow. And I think it's weird that like the iPhone and the ARM chips, all the things we talk about, have sort of like led to this incredible cable box that's super responsive that like I don't think anyone really intended it to come out. It's almost like the benefits of the iPhone and M1 chips like fall all the way down to the stream box, because like I don't know if you've turned on, like I've got several TVs that have like the quote unquote smart TV.
My TV takes like 20 seconds to boot up.
Yeah, and you're like, you can like literally, you can clock it. You're like, you can feel the disc like, booting up, and it's like, wow, Apple TV's like has really figured it out. And I don't even think Apple even cares, right? That's what I also think is funny about it, is like they just seem, because these are the old chips. These are like the throwaway chips they throw in these things.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, good job, Apple. Good job, Apple, for not trying and winning, if you will. I believe they have won the streaming box game. And
what's crazy is, like somewhere there's a debug console on your TV where there's just like Linux booting up and it's doing like, a disk check or something. And you're sitting there like, what the hell? And so it's they're hiding it behind their big, the whatever TV brand logo you have, but in the background it's just like Linux booting up. And they've bought like a rock bottom, SSD or USB drive that's slow as sin, and it's just like, it's just painful to know that that's what's happening with what should just be a display, right?
Absolutely.
It should just be like powered on. Instead, they're like, no, we need to spy on you.
Yes, and you're like, we would put that on the roadmap. Be like, hey, if these TVs are going to try to like be the connected TVs, they need to up their games. They need better processors, better discs. And if not, everyone's just going to use the Apple TV. The other thing I think we got to put on the roadmap here, and I think you kind of alluded to it before, it's like too many services, right? So I think before we're really going to complete this, we need, I'm going to say Netflix and Disney, they're in there. They're gonna, if you will, be around for a while. They'll have some longevity. I think this whole Peacock, HBO, Discovery, Paramount, I don't know, I think you mentioned some other ones, like they're going to all have to fight it out and just like essentially have to join up and become like the third service, in my opinion. Because once they do that, and this could take, again, we're talking years here, like it'll take a while. Everyone first has to launch a new service, then everyone has to, say they're going to change the world, and then everyone has to fail at the new service, and then eventually some private equity or somebody comes in and be like, let me start buying up your catalogs and let me put you in
and selling it to Tubi or Tubi.
Yeah, whatever, right?
And Roku, who'll slap commercials in every 30 minutes.
Somehow we got too many services. Like it just is, I don't think it's gonna live, right? So we can probably have, like, to your point, we probably need one more paid service with those commercials, and we probably need like a Tubi, right? To be like, okay, everything else is just
is it Apple TV?
We're sending it. Well, that's the other one. It could be Apple TV. It could be YouTube TV. It could be Amazon. But somebody has to like figure this out, right? Somebody has to like take all these other 4 companies and put them out of their misery. And also, too, this would help all of us in families, where someone will eventually discover a show. They're like, oh, it's on Peacock. And then you have to be like, we don't have that one. We're going to sign up, and then we're going to shut it down 3 months later. So I think that's on our roadmap, is we got to basically get rid of, I'll say combine. Let's not say get rid of. Let's say, strategically combine 4 of these streaming services into
all
one.
Those other services, they need to form themselves a good bundle.
That's right. Ideally,
bring back the cable bundle, man.
That's fine. Let's just get there. That's what I'm saying.
And they could charge you $90 a month, and you'll only really care about 2 pieces of the bundle.
Yeah. And then to your original thing about sports, I think at this point we're going to say it's Amazon, Apple TV, or Google through YouTube. Somebody has to decide, because those companies have so much money. They are the ones that basically can, if you will, quote unquote, rent the sports rights, throw them in their bundle of choice, whether that be Apple TV Plus or Amazon Prime or whatever, because they are the only ones that have enough money, I think, to eventually like basically pay the leagues what they want, and they can basically just slam it in with their other stuff, right? Another reason to watch. And Amazon seems to be the lead there with the NFL. Apple has MLS, and YouTube is going to have NFL Sunday Ticket. So hopefully, at the end, all the sports I think will end up with like the big, if you will, giants of the space. So what do you think? Is that like a reasonable roadmap putting together?
Sure. And I'll just keep downloading here in Australia the next day.
All right. And then I think on our final slide here, we'd be like, well, what's the potential disruption, right? Like what could like mess all this up? It's like, I don't know. Like I read something about, 4K basically coming to over the air. And it's like, I don't know, like, does the antenna come back at some point? Will we basically figure out that like, oh, actually digital signals rather, broadcast over the air actually are really, really good. We can get really high quality pictures. Like, does somebody
there's
like
no content on the terrestrial stuff?
That's what I guess that's what I just wondered. Does somebody like figure that and be like, actually, here's a way that we can do it real cheap, and they somehow come up with some new content, and it's
I had an over the air DVR, like a homemade one back in the US, and here in Australia, like it doesn't work because it's different, all different equipment, and I don't really care. But like you can, that stuff is there. I mean, it's accessible. It's just it's spousal acceptance will be low, and maybe you can cram it onto your Plex somehow. But I don't think it's coming back.
All right. Well, we'll check in. So, okay, 25 years in, I'm going to say we're about 50% of the way there. So, Matt, you and I will reconvene here in 10 years to see if the project was finally completed. All right. Digital transformation of TV. Always love it. And
I look forward to collecting our consulting dollars.
I do like it. But it's funny to think of like how long some of these things go. It's like it probably will be like 2035 before anything else will really happen. So,
well, I didn't really want to get into it, but it was like I think Netflix is next on my like rotation block. Yeah,
I definitely think it's one we could let go too. I have the same kind of feeling. So it's like I think they'll figure out like either better programming. They'll do something, is my guess, to like kind of like solidify themselves. But that would be a big, like if you were really a non-believer, talk about like, this is not an investing podcast, but like, I think there is a case, like, a real big short position in Netflix, like you just don't believe they're going to be disrupted out of it. Basically, that would be quite, that would be an interesting bet. Like this, I'm sure
I'm sure they are paranoid about that. And, will continue to aggressively invest in content and and strategies to maximize their market reach, whereas I feel like other businesses are probably not paranoid enough. Like I feel like Paramount and Discover or whatever are just kind of like, if we build it, people just pay us, and like, nah. You showed up immediately in the monthly rotation rather than an annual subscription. And you're not going to escape it. Netflix knows that they're on that bubble, and Disney is probably worried that they're on that bubble, and they probably shouldn't be worried that they're on that bubble.
Yeah, because I think they just have that timeless content, right? And I think that's like the whole thing.
And they've got like we started Mandalorian season 3 last night, right? I mean, it's like I didn't know it was coming. You're just like stuff just shows up, and you're like, oh well, I'm locked into this for 6 weeks. Yeah.
All right. Now from TV to COBOL. That's where we're going. All right, you ready?
Oh, I'm here for COBOL.
Okay. All right, Matt. Well, we just talked about a long-running digital transformation project, but there's even one that I'm going to say that's been running longer. It's basically here in the U.S., the Internal Revenue Service, also known as IRS. They are in a bad state, right? I guess their technology was, essentially somewhere between 25 to 64 years old. And in some of the software is up to 15 versions behind. So this basically comes down to this. method to collect taxes in the United States is, for the most part, I think we can say the systems are not being updated at all, right? And as we move forward, I think this is potentially, I'd be interested in your take here. Like, is this basically potentially the largest digital transformation project out there? Like maybe the most complex? Like, is there like a nuclear power system somewhere that would be more complicated, or is this it? And can you think of something more complicated than this?
I definitely can't think of anything in the US that touches as many people, right? I mean, India had their digital ID program. That was a massive program, right? The scale of that, was, an order of magnitude more people. But as far as like the US goes, I can't think of anything that is as beastly, right? I mean, it touches so many Americans, and it's so bad.
And if you kind of drill into it, what's interesting here is like there's essentially, and so other people are going to know more about it, but there's essentially an individual master file, IMF, which I guess is like an essential key component to how the entire system runs. And it is 60 years old. It is described as the authoritative data source. And it is, they've been trying to essentially, if you will, upgrade it or re-architect it for at least a decade now. Now, the last time, the target completion date that they've announced now is 2030, right? So they've basically tried a bunch of times, given up. Now they're saying it's 2030. And so like this kind of like makes me think of, like, I don't know, you never want to be like too pessimistic, but I was thinking to myself, like, is this even possible to do? Because the other thing that's here, we won't make this a political podcast. We'll just say that, not all parties are on board with like getting the system up to date, right? So basically you have different policies, you have different political views. So there's certain, parts of the government that don't even want the IRS to like, be, I don't want to say doing anything, but they're not interested in it working more effectively. So I'm thinking to myself, it's like, and as far as numbers, this was also kind of startling to see, is that taxpayers paid 4.1 trillion. That's trillion dollars of taxes, and I guess taxpayers were refunded 1.1 trillion dollars. So it's not like money's the issue here. It's like you have tons of money coming in. You've got a bunch of refunds going out, and you've got a rather large budget is actually applied to this. So it's not like, there's not enough, but like, I think this comes down to like, can you even install a leadership to figure out what's going on? How does it even actually work? So I guess kind of back to my original question is like, do you think ultimately it's a lost cause, or is there somebody out there that can come in and make the system work?
Well, it can't be a lost cause. I mean, this is a sort of project like you can't actually give up on this because this is a major source of funding for the United States government, and I mean, this article is it's full of chef's kiss quotes, right? I mean, a private company with tens of millions of customers would go belly up if their IT was older than the CEO's parents. I mean, wow. But I mean, part of me thinks back to like, well, you had the digital agencies that were formed under like Obama and stuff that wanted to come in and reform some of they didn't they didn't do the IRS. They went over to like some of the other agencies and updated their IT, and those were fairly successful, and you've seen that emulated in other countries. Australia has similar success stories, and some of the folks behind like DevOps days in Australia were like movers and shakers in that circle. And then in the US, like Jez Humble was part of that for a while. And so maybe you could try to like do something like that with the IRS. But they mention it, but reading through the lines, I'm like, all I smell is Accenture, right? I'm like, this is just probably wrapped up in like huge consulting shops that are gonna like just suck the government dry year after year and have nothing to show for it. I mean, that IBM, Deloitte, Accenture, they're all just in there making money hand over fist and selling them, COBOL 14 versions behind because they upgraded it, from 15 behind. And it's like, that's probably not the right tack. I think the right tack is probably, as my very uninformed outsider viewpoint of this is like, look, you throw some APIs on this, replicate the data, you start the strangler pattern, and you start killing off things like this, IMS or whatever. And I don't care what database you put on the back end, but it's like you can tackle these sorts of projects. It's just I think the sorts of people who are, or, the sorts of shops that are doing the work are there to get a contract, staff it with some good quality architects, and then those people walk away and they replace it with, the year one employees who, don't have the skills to be here. I mean, this is a massive project. You need a large, skilled team who are in it for the long haul. There was an interview with the product manager for Amazon's billing team, and AWS billing is probably one of the largest private compute projects on the planet. That is not an exaggeration. I mean, they're dealing with billions of data points a second. And one of the points he made in the interview was the fact that most of the team has been there for 7 or 8 years. People show up and they're like, this is like the most god awful problem, and I love it. And Amazon pays those people well. They are getting like experts in their field. They're making sure that these people are, incented to stay. And that's not happening at the IRS. The government isn't paying well, or they're farming it out to consulting shops who the consulting shops make a lot of money, and then they don't bring in high quality staff. And so like you're not going to solve this problem with the current approach.
Yeah, and I think to that end, I mean, a couple of facts here from the article kind of stick out from things you said there. So one, it says the IRS had 21 IT modernization initiatives as of August 2022. And they said the GA reported that more than a quarter of them did not have timeframes for addressing antiquated systems. And they go on to say, the IRS lacks accountability for completing these key elements. And I think that's the part where I think you're kind of hitting on. And I think maybe the Amazon billing team is instructive here. Is like, I think you have to basically completely rethink it, at least how the government wants to do things. Like in this case, I think if someone said, hey, I'm in charge, I'd be like, we need to view this as like a 20-year project, and we need to start recruiting people and training people that really want to spend a good chunk of their career working on this, right? And I think that would have to be a combination of like obviously financial incentives, maybe something along with job security, and also just, I don't know, if you will, like flexibility in where they work or opening different places. Like you've got to basically look at it and be like, it's almost the opposite of hiring the quote unquote Stanford graduate that wants to like start a new company and, change the world. It's like, you're looking for someone like, I want you to come in and apply good, sound software engineering practices that are well known against legacy systems. I want you to learn some of the legacy systems and at least help us convert it. And I want you to do it over a decade. And during that, and if we can do that, right, I'm not going to ask you to work 80 hours a week or like, push for some giant launch. I want to just make consistent progress so that this IMF file, we finally, if you will, unlock it, right? You know what I mean? And
right.
I think you've got to like build a whole organization around it. It can't be, to your point, like it can't be consultants who are kind of coming in and out, getting their 2 or 3 years of, post-grad training, right, from Accenture
on
to moving on. But kind of what happens, right? It's like we need, people that are really committed to it. And I also don't think you can, if you will, expect people to do it sort of like on this kind of like, well, I've made all my money, right, and now I'm coming back to give back. It's like, no, like we need to look at this as like a really important job that has to appeal to maybe a different type of person, but it has to appeal to someone that's going to stay with it for a while. And I think until you do that, it does feel like something that will just cycle through and just repeat over and over again.
Well, and we don't want to make this a political thing, but you have a lot of people who demonize the government, period. And like, having now not living in the US and seeing like a government that isn't hated by, half the population and works surprisingly amazingly, right? I mean, like, all the things that, I don't dread going to the DMV, because when I get there, it's like this place is run very well and everyone's polite and the tech is great and like things move along quickly, and when it doesn't you kind of understand why. And comparison, like my wife went to the DMV in Austin while we were there over Christmas and it took 3 hours.
Right.
And that was just nuts. Here it was like we made an appointment online, showed up, and we're out in 15 minutes. And it just, magically things happen. And I think so, you do have things like the US Digital Service where people are, signing up to help their country and they're trying to like be more tech forward on some of the stuff. But the problem for this story though is it's the IRS, which people have been like brought up to hate on, and like you can't have it both ways. You can't be patriotic and hate your government.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting to, and I think the only way to maybe come at it from the most neutral perspective would be trying to separate the policy discussions from the implementation. Like
Exactly.
just fundamentally having the conversation like, listen, this government needs to collect taxes and we're all part of the citizens of it, and we want that to be efficient, we want it to be accurate, and we want it to be relatively painless because we're all consumers of paying taxes at some point.
Well, and you should want it to be efficient because as a person paying taxes, because it's so bad, you have to pay more.
Right, because you're basically overpaying for it. And so the point is, like, I think that's, I guess, maybe the hardest part. And I guess some kind of leader sort of like trying to separate these. It's almost the idea of the civil servants versus the policy kind of side of it. It's like, hey, we want this to run well and we need this to run well. We can still have like what the exact policies are. That conversation probably will never end and it will always be a policy discussion. But until someone says like, hey, I really do want this system to run well, you really are going to be in a difficult position to ever making it, better in any way. And it's like, when you see these numbers, right? Like 60 years, 70 years, it's like, it does make me feel like our children will be doing a podcast about this, Matt. And we will, maybe it'll be Software Defined Talk episode, 2,500. And they'll be like, can you believe the IMF file is 150 years old or whatever it will be by then? And it's like, yeah, it's like, the only other thing I could think of would be, because if this was a large corporation, we'd almost say something like, well, the way large corporation systems eventually get changed is the companies literally go away, right? The companies go away and get acquired.
But it can't go away.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is like, unless someone like radically rewrote the tax code and was like, hey, we're starting out with a completely different version. It's super simple and it's this, like, you're always going to be stuck with this legacy system. So I don't know. This is just one that, as I said before, and I'd love for the listeners, if anyone knows of like a more complicated project, like, oh, this IRS problem's nothing, you ought to see this one, because I really do like think it's a fascinating one to watch, right? Like, where's it going to go? What's going to happen? And really, like, this is maybe one of the few programs I've ever seen where I'm like, I'm even questioning, like, can it be done? Right? Like, I think literally, can it be done is an interesting question, because maybe the most pessimistic is like, nothing's ever going to change. All you can do is just kind of patch together this crazy system and, just do your best to keep it up, which is, I don't know, it's just someone that works in technology and sort of information technology. It's like, it's kind of sad. If we can't make this simple, what are we doing?
I say go after the AWS billing guy. I mean that's the sort of thing.
Not a bad place to start, right?
Yeah. I mean, you appeal to, and I don't even know, you appeal to their patriotism, and you have to pay them better because the IRS doesn't pay well, and maybe you let them work in the digital service agency instead of for the IRS, so they don't have people like giving them a hard time. That's the problem, is like people demonizing the civil servants when it's the politicians that deserve your hate. And so like there's a stigma to just even working at the IRS, or even working for the government, and which is just, it shouldn't be that way, right? We need smart people to be motivated to want to work for the government to fix these sorts of things. We want to have like a functional government, rather than just like, this hemorrhaging system that, like, I mean, literally the Australian tax office is the same size as the IRS. Yeah. And that's just wrong. Or my taxes are like 2 pages, and it's everything is just so much simpler here, and they take a big chunk, but you feel like you're getting a lot more value for your dollars when your government is not like perpetually broke. And the way the government does not go away, so you have to fix this. I mean, you can't just say like, well, you know, private equity will take this over and fix it and just sunset. Like, no, the government does not go away. The government goes away and you're Somalia, right?
Well, listen,
so please fix this.
Yeah, I agree. Now, a person unlikely to get involved in this, in fixing this, I think, I'm going to go so far as to make this prediction. I think DHH. I don't think DHH has taken over the IRS. I don't think he has any interest in that. But DHH is back because we talked a lot about him last week, and I, hesitated to even put this in the show notes, but then there's just too many comments in the Slack. So he's back. 37 Signals is back, and they have now introduced, what is the official pronunciation? Is it Maersk? Am I saying that correctly?
It's got to be Maersk, like the company.
Okay, MRSK. And Matt, maybe I'll just put my cards on the table. This entire project just makes me angry. Like, I have like a bad reaction to it. So I want to you're going to maybe be some therapy for me. I want to come at it with an open mind. And I want, you have a ton of experience in, the whole world of configuration management. Before I reflexively just start, ranting on about like, this is the wrong direction. Let's go in with an open mind. So maybe you can give us a quick overview. Is what exactly does Maersk do?
So Maersk is essentially a job scheduler built on top of SSH and Docker, which probably sounds slightly familiar. You have a centralized location where you push out your jobs to awaiting machine hosts that are running Docker, and they will run your machines for you. This is like circa the year Kubernetes came out level technology.
All right, now let's pause here, because the way, let's be very generous here. Like, the reason DHH gave for launching it was that essentially Kubernetes is too complicated, right? And they had some experience trying to run it. And for those that are looking for a more simplified way of, if you will, managing and deploying their containers, Maersk is the solution. I'm just trying to I just want to state the premise as clearly as possible. Is that inaccurate in any way, at least from the DHH's position in the blog he wrote?
Sure. I mean, essentially, yes, it's accurate because it solves his problem, but this is the problem. Like when Kubernetes came out, there were dozens of these, probably hundreds. Everyone had written some sort of scheduler on top of containers to spray a bunch of stuff onto a bunch of machines. And AWS had one. Various
Docker Swarm, of course, that was
Docker Swarm, of course. And people got excited about Docker. They were like, oh, if I put a schedule on this and spray it to a bunch of machines, and so there was that was happening, and Google kind of showed up with Kubernetes and said, like, look, we've been doing this for 10 plus years. You're going to need something that looks like this. Here's this thing that we started called Kubernetes. And Kubernetes killed a lot of those projects because, and of course, Mesos. Kubernetes killed a lot of those projects because it had the groundswell of open source behind it. It had all the licensing, right, and the CNCF and fun things like that. But it also had the approach of being of having a lot of the foresight for these are the issues you're going to run into. We're going to make everything have nice APIs and make it composable. So when you need to face those problems, we might not have it ready, but we have the composable infrastructure so you can plug that stuff in. And so when some people look at Kubernetes, they're like, this thing's a monster, right? It does, too many things. And then you have other people, like Cote, who are like, I thought Docker did that, or I thought Kubernetes did that. And the answer is like, yes, Kubernetes does that, No, Kubernetes doesn't do that, because you have to build up these structures to solve these problems for everyone. And so when DHH shows up, he's like, look, I wrote something better than Kubernetes because it solved my problem. Right.
Right.
And
And that's
as
the part
opposed
that
to a
does,
general purpose, platform.
right. But I think
And,
that's what, that's the distinction, I guess, that's sort of like, I don't know, I guess I do just sort of like have a visceral reaction to. There's a difference between like, I've written some tools that I think are good for what I do, right? And like we can talk about it, and maybe we'll in a minute. Like, yeah, homegrown tools, and I'm stealing, I think, from Justin Garrison or someone else said it's like, basically, you know, the biggest lock-in is always your homegrown tools, right? Like, and people always worry about vendor lock-in, but it's like, hey, if you start writing a lot of your own tools and you can't get away from them, that's almost the worst kind of lock-in, right? So you got to think about that. But like, it's again, it's fine. We all write some of our own scripts. We all like, have some things that make our lives a little bit easier. But I think it's a whole nother thing. Like when you kind of launch it out as like, this is the better way, right? And this is like, everyone that's not doing it this way for this kind of use case is doesn't get it. I don't know. That's the part that I guess, like, just, I don't know, it just irritates me. And I know they've had, a ton of success with Ruby on Rails. Like there's nothing I can sit here and it's like, I didn't write Ruby on Rails. I think most people, I don't know, Matt, you're in a better position to say it certainly has its place. It was very popular.
I'm a fan because it glues a bunch of things together, and it has a very opinionated
way. A lot
of
people like it, right? But it's sort of like, I just feel like maybe we're getting a little bit of halo effect. It's like, oh, I did this for Ruby on Rails, and now I'm going to go do this for, whatever, let's call it container scheduling. And it's like, I don't know. Part of me is like, hey, a lot of people have been working on this for a long time, and there's lots of different ways to do it. And, and this coupled with the whole like anti-cloud stance, it's like, well, one way to get around, dealing with Kubernetes is to use a managed version of it, right? Well, we already know, and we've already heard, the long rant from DHH about like why that's not right and why you should do everything yourself, right? But now, and we heard a lot about cost savings, and we talked about that extensively on the last episode. But now it's like, to me, it's like, well, you said you're going to save $7 million, but now you're starting to build a lot of your own tools, which are going to require a lot of maintenance, right? And probably what usually happens, and we see this over and over, is that like eventually your requirements change and you start to grow to the quote unquote more complicated thing, right? Your app gets bigger. You want to do
maybe
more.
I mean, to play devil's advocate, like he doesn't have to, right? He knows what his business looks like. He doesn't have to like add features to this. That's what makes me mad, is he thinks that his little subset of features is the same thing. He's like, oh, I don't need Kubernetes because I have this. It's like, well, shit, I didn't need Kubernetes either because I have SSH, but that's not the same thing. It's like, I don't need containers and virtualization because I have a big server that will run my app. It's like, but no, you're gaslighting what you're solving here. It's like, yes, you neatly solved your little problem. You open sourced it. It's got a cute project name. And but this has no longevity in the face of Nomad and Kubernetes and things like that. It's like I wouldn't touch this, right? And unless
and I think maybe you should take a few minutes, because I think again, I'm referencing Justin Garrison's Twitter thread. I think Justin especially, like, really, I think he's very, very smart in this area, maybe smart in general, of course, but AWS and just containers in general. And I think many people immediately came out and were like, hey, this is really, you should be using Nomad. So maybe for all the rest of us, like, give us the quick, like, who's behind Nomad and what does Nomad do?
So Nomad is a container scheduler from the folks at HashiCorp, and it's open source. It has a much smaller footprint than Kubernetes because it does a lot less than Kubernetes. And for a lot of use cases, people are like, "This is fine. I don't need all that extra functionality. I just need something that is lightweight, schedules my containers, puts them on machines, and reports back." And so you see, I think, like, maybe was it Cosmonic? Some of I've seen a couple of SaaS providers recently say, like, oh, we didn't actually need Kubernetes. We needed something more lightweight. We went with Nomad. There are people who are happy not to run the full Kubernetes stack. And Nomad has existed in that space for quite a while.
Yeah, and so I just want to pause here because I think not only that, but like it's well documented. It has a pretty active community. It has, I think, a lot of smart people looking at it. And everything that you just said, like to me, all the requirements of Maersk like are basically fulfilled with Nomad. I mean, I guess someone's going to tell me there's something that isn't right, but like,
but even if Nomad didn't exist,
go ahead.
It's like, what? Why not K3S? Right? That's what I use, and it's like it's fine. It does half the stuff that Kubernetes does. It's still Kubernetes though, and so what you're going to end up with is like this bespoke custom app that nobody uses. You can't hire anybody to understand, and they'll probably start rejecting PRs when people show up with like, oh, can you support this and this and this? Because I do that in Kubernetes. And they're like, no. And it's like, of course the answer is no, right? I mean, SSH in a for loop is great, but it's not config management. And Maersk is not, yes, it's a container scheduler, but it's still based off a lot of stuff that isn't particularly great at, everything. And that's kind of the point of Kubernetes. Like, well, they're doing their best to solve everything. And there are lightweight alternatives, whether it's, a subset of Kubernetes like K3S or, alternatives that are still trying to be, generally useful with a not long open source history like Nomad. But to just show up and like, oh, look, I solved a problem. It's like, yeah, you did, and 100 other companies, and everyone stopped working on that, when they saw the writing on the wall. And that's what's annoying.
Yeah. And I guess the other part, to me, I guess the thing that kind of annoys me too is the sort of like, I guess it's not so much him personally, but it's just around, this is why, and at times I feel like we don't ever make progress. It's just like it's like we're fragmenting ourselves again. It's like, okay, people going back, this is like in one of the themes of Cote's newsletter a lot, at least more recently, it's just been like, hey, like we kind of keep reinventing the thing, and that's fine. New is good, but like at some point we want to make progress forward. And like this kind of project, and also because he has a big megaphone, it'd be one thing if I just launched it, no one would care, no one would look at it, just be some other random scripts in GitHub, no big deal. But it's gonna like, a lot of people are gonna talk about it. We're talking about it, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what you think of it. And it's sort of just going to become a distraction to me. And it seems like plenty of other ways to solve this problem. And I guess I just wanted to mention, what is the other thing that came up a lot? Was it Capistrano? Am I getting that name right?
Yeah. Capistrano.
Go ahead.
I mean, Capistrano is just a way to send stuff across a bunch of machines. I mean, it's SSH in a for loop. That's what a lot of early Chef deployments were done with Capistrano, because you needed to like run a command on a bunch of machines. Or spray some packages across a bunch of machines. And I think in the blog post he was like, yeah, this isn't much different than Capistrano. And okay, why didn't you use Capistrano? Whatever. Why didn't you use one of the other SSH tools? Why didn't you just use Ansible? Right? Because that's essentially what this is.
Yeah, there was a funny comment. I will not name the user. It was like, so is this one Ansible script or two Ansible scripts? That was one of the many comments in the Software Defined Talk Slack this week. So I guess maybe the takeaway here is like, I don't know. I just think everything about this is wrong, right? There are other solutions to this problem. I don't know how else to say it. Like, I just feel like there are other solutions.
Everything about this is wrong.
It is. It just feels that way. It's like there are other solutions to this problem. There are other ways to get involved in it. I think it's a distraction. And then just for the 37 signals business,
Brandon, those weren't invented here.
I know that's the whole thing. But what's funny is like they've done so much writing at 37 Signals about like focus on the customer and making money and running a lifestyle business. And it's like, I just like none of this seemed like we never. What's funny about all of this is like we never see anything from DHH around like here's some new features of we've made this better, we've made that better. Like focus on this.
Well, that's because they're in the private equity cost cutting business now.
That's what I think of it. I'm just like, why isn't there anything about like, hey, we implemented some other great things in email, and if you haven't tried Hey Now, you should go get it, right? And it's like it's all this internal cost cutting, internal tools, built a new Dell service, and this from the same group of people that I think they wrote Rework, right, which is like a super short book, and it's got like all these really short chapters, and a lot of it's like focus on making money and things like that. And it's all of this seems like a distraction. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I need to make a personal pledge. We will not talk about DHH for at least
but
a month.
This is gold because this encompasses like the entire software industry.
That's true. So maybe in the end, it's just good podcast content. Like, I guess maybe that's what I should be happy about. Is just every week I can come on and just like there'll be something I am unhappy about. So yeah. So we're gonna add some links to Mersk in the thing, and I recommend you don't click on them. Don't click on them. Don't try it. Just go.
No, read it and think about it as like if you saw this and in 2015, you'd be like, oh yeah, I see what you were doing there. That's why we switched to Kubernetes.
And I did. I watched the 20-minute demo. It's 20 minutes of my life I will not.
Oh, you watched the demo? Wow.
I did. No, because I was like, well, maybe
I read the README and I was like, I see what you're doing here. No, thank you.
That's great. So, all right. Well, Matt, there was some other news we'll touch on just very briefly here. One, there's all this craziness going on Twitter. We're not going to get into it, but the thing I thought was funny is that Twitter essentially is declaring Slack bankruptcy. They basically are going to reset it. So they had 88,188 channels in their Slack, and I guess they're just resetting it. They're deleting all of those or archiving them and starting over, which this may be the only thing I've seen recently from Twitter that I agree with. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, let's just start over. Like the Slack's out of control. But the thing that I think is funny is like they may have 88,188 Slack channels. But my question is, do they have a thread in Slack that's over 9,000 messages long? So congratulations to everyone that's in the Software Defined Talk Slack and those that are actually in the thread. So this is a thread we've had going that you started, Matt.
Once you're in the thread, you can't leave.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of it. Is once you've posted to it, you get notified anytime someone else posts to it. Yes.
You unintentionally started this, I should say, too. This wasn't something.
It
took on a life of its own. So it just went over 9,000 messages. Of course, you can only read back through several hundred, or because it eventually gets archived in the free plan. So every once in a while, Slack gives us the enterprise plan. You can go back and read from the very beginning. You can get all 9,000. Like once a year, you can go back and get all 9,000 messages. But if you haven't already joined the Software Defined Talk Slack, what you should do is go to softwaredefinedtalk.com. There, you should just click on Slack, and you can sign up. And if you are so interested, you can reply to the thread. I don't even know what the subject is right now. I think it was a little bit about interviewing this week. You can get in there and you can be part of the 9,000 messages. And we believe we have headroom to 20,000. That's what we've been told. So I think we think we got about 10,000 more messages before the thread will probably just die, or the Slack instance will no longer take it. So take that, Elon Musk. You have 88,000 channels, but we have 9,000 messages in the thread. Now, a few other things here. So a few shout outs to listeners. A bunch of people wanted stickers this week, which has been fantastic. So I sent stickers to Frank in the Netherlands, over there by Cote. Also sent some stickers to both Chris in Allen, Texas, and Simon in the UK. They both wrote in saying they got new laptops. So I love that. The fact that people not only getting new laptops, maybe it's like, I don't know, new physical year, a lot of places, people getting some new laptops. But I love that people think like, yeah, I got to replace my stickers. So happy to send them some stickers. And I also sent stickers to William in Florida, and he said he needed one for his thermos and his bike. So yeah, they're laptop stickers, but you can use them for whatever you want. A thermos, a bike, a baby stroller. I don't know, just I say get 10 stickers, put them on 10 different things. That's what we do. So if you would like a sticker, all you have to do is email your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com, and I will be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. And I also wanted to thank David. He emailed from Hawaii, of all places, to give us a little bit more information about eggs. So he was sort of reiterating what we did learn about the refrigerated versus unrefrigerated. It's all about what's your approach to containing disease. No updates on what's going on in New Zealand. Matt, you haven't.
I want to know what's happening in Hawaii, because like Kauai, there's like chickens everywhere. Are they just leaving eggs?
Funny, right? Because he emailed over the weekend. And I was just like, he basically in his signature said Hawaii, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're in Hawaii. That sounds awesome. And he was like, yeah, I basically lived there for a long time. Basically moved away, came back. He said he really likes it, but there's not a lot of tech jobs. But I guess
no,
if you're working,
but if you can work remote,
it's better but time zone than Australia. Matt, this is funny. Like, you're so far in Australia, and like anytime I tell someone you live in Australia, and I'm sure you hear this on, people are like, oh, that's awesome. Sydney's awesome. But I was like, what is better, living in Hawaii or living in Sydney, Australia? I was like, I don't know. Living in Hawaii sounds pretty cool, but it seems like it would also maybe like you get island fever pretty quick. So I don't know. I should ask you, Matt, if I could move the family, all expenses paid right now to Hawaii, would the family be in, or are you all settled in Sydney, and Sydney's where you want to be?
I don't know, because probably I'm thinking Haven't been to Hawaii quite a few times. I would opt for the Big Island, but then island fever could be like a real thing because there's limited stuff you could do, and like, or you could choose Honolulu, to go, or Oahu
A
for
little bigger.
all the benefits of the Big Island, but or of a big city, not on the Big Island. But I don't know. I'm
Well, let me ask you this:
quite.
like, I feel like Hawaii. Like, you've made more stops to Hawaii because, like, how far is the flight from Sydney to Hawaii for you? It's
It's still 10.5 hours.
okay, still pretty far. I was gonna say because I feel like you've met some family there, whatever. That's been
Oh
like a
yeah,
meeting
yeah,
point
yeah.
at different times, right? Where it's like because
Yes.
it's obviously even from Austin, I think it's 8 hours, so it's a long way. So I don't know. I guess it's not really that close. I was like, well, maybe like it's sort of like closer than certainly the U.S. So, well, I guess we'll just say, David, we appreciate the information about eggs, but at this point, we just want to know about how we can all live in Hawaii with you. So call us, let us know if there's a place to stay. Now, upcoming, and in fact, next week, there's going to be some conferences. So Matt, you and Cote are going to be at the Southern California Linux Expo, which is also known
Yes.
as Scale. So Matt and Cote will be there. Unknown, there'll probably be some live recording. I've greenlighted with the Software Defined Talk CFO. Like we've got plenty of happy hour budget, Matt. So go out there, buy some drinks for people. If you would like to still register for the conference, probably I got to do it fast. I don't know when they're closing registration, but I imagine it's soon. You can
I'm
use
sure they have like day of
day
registration.
of. Well, you should use
Scale
the
is
code.
a relaxed event.
Okay, you should use the code DevOps, so it's just
Oh,
DEVOP, and I was told that you can get a really good discount for that. So so check that one out. Also, some conferences coming up here. You got Pi Texas, that's April 1st and 2nd. KubeCon EU, also Software Defined Talk is going to have a presence there. I think we are a media sponsor. I think Matt and Cote will be there. I'm sure we'll talk about that one as it gets closer. We've got DevOps Days Birmingham, that's Alabama. Roll Tide, Roar Eagle, that's April 20 and 21st. And then DevOps Day Austin, actually fast approaching. That'll be May 4th and 5th. And also, Matt wanted to give you a few moments. Matt is a star. He's a podcast star. He's been making the rounds on all the major podcasts. Matt, why don't you tell us a few of the podcasts you've recently appeared on?
Well, it's been a busy 2 months of the year so far. I was on, well, obviously I did our friends over at the Cloudcast. I did that. I did open observability talks, which I'm sure you really just wanted me to say observability because it's so hard for me to say. But I'm not going to call it monitoring. I did that podcast, which was a lot of fun, and and some of the ones that got recorded last year showed up recently in the feed. So
Yeah, and in fact, the
recorded.
one was Software Engineering Daily, right? That was our good friend
That was at
Jordan.
KubeCon, yeah, and
He's well, it just recently came out, Matt. Don't we got to like keep the listeners in the dark. Yeah, just
hey,
quietly.
it's timeless content.
It's timeless content. So you should listen if you want to hear Jordy, who's been a longtime listener of the show, interview Matt in a wide-ranging conversation. You should check that out. So all the links for those shows probably will be in the show notes. It's up to Matt if he puts them in or not. We'll see. And if not, you should email Matt
No, I will
directly.
go track them down and put them in the notes.
You should update Matt directly or ask him directly. And he'll send you all the links. Now, a few other things. So I'll go ahead. So the recommendation, Matt already gave away my recommendation since we were talking about some media stuff. I did the new Formula One season starting this week. I'm all in. I love Formula One. Been watching it a ton. So if you're new to the sport or you just like scripted television or I guess reality TV, if you will, watch Drive to Survive Season 5. So you can get up to date on everything that's happening, learn all the drivers, learn all the teams. You can pick all the teams who you want to cheer for, pick a driver you want to cheer for. Tech is sponsoring a ton of them. So if you're an AWS, you can cheer for Ferrari. I think VMware's McLaren. Oracle is Red Bull. I think those two have like a persona that kind of like match up. They're kind of like, the evil doers that are real successful. So anyway, there's tons of drama in there. And the first race is this weekend. So you can watch the series and then you can watch the race and you can, if you are so inclined, you can go subscribe to Formula One and watch it wherever you are in the world. So having said all that, Matt, what's your recommendation?
My recommendation this week is something I've recommended before. If you play the video game Factorio, which is highly addictive, I recommend. Maybe you don't. I don't know. I come in and out of being addicted to it. There's a expansion thing called story mode that I had or the story missions, and Yeah, I just felt like replaying it and recently replayed it, and I found out my name's in the credits because I opened a lot of bug reports,
Oh, really?
which just cracks me up. Anytime I see my name anywhere, I'm always just like, "That's hilarious," So that's my pick. Is throw that guy a couple bucks on Patreon because it's a labor of love.
That's awesome. Well, Matt, you have to get us a screenshot of your name or something. We'll have to somehow find some way to put it
I
on.
did a double take because I was just like clicking through the credits. I was like, wait, did I see my name? And then I had to like rerun it. So
That's awesome. Well, good for you,
yeah.
man. Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, not only are you on a podcast guest, a famous person for that, you're a famous person for Factorio as well. That's fantastic.
I blame JJ.
All right. Well, if this was the first time you've heard Software Defined Talk, welcome. You can probably subscribe right now in the podcast player you're listening to. If you want to follow us on any of the social channels, you should go to softwaredefinedtalk.com. And we've got Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Mastodon, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it. We've got it. You can watch us record this live, usually pretty much on Wednesdays afternoons for the most part, or you can go back and, if you will, see behind the scenes of this highly produced, well-organized podcast. No one would believe there's just chaos behind the scenes. And with that, we will talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.
All right. Good episode. Got it done. I don't know, maybe we didn't get a lot of people in the chat this time, but Brian, appreciate you promoting the newsletter. Always appreciate that. And I don't know, I think the rest of this
weird
is
spam.
That. It's hard. I don't have the YouTube. Like I kind of have it up, but it's like in a different, I gotta like find a way to like kind of keep, I don't know, whatever the spam control.
What can you do? I mean, it's
well, you
already
can just delete it. You can like, you can just, I mean, once it's there, you can, once it's in restreamed out, you're right. It's there forever. So I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. All right. Well, thanks for everyone who watched us today. And if you're going to be in LA next week, go find Matt and Kote.
Scales where it's at.
So. All right, we'll talk to you all next time.
All right. Bye.